making sure we all knew that we measured or.
I weigh my stuff.
Yeah, we do the scale.
All right, so here's the one thing I like to say. If you've got 2 colors, have 3 brushes, okay? If you have 3 colors, have two extra brushes, right? Because those are going to be your dry brushes. So the first way I'm going to show you is going to be if you're using a typical color brush. I didn't bring my cellophanes, but I did bring foils, and I will tell you, you can get these, and I'm big on using the cheap foils as well in the salon, I get it. But when you're doing something like this, it really will help if you spend a little bit extra money to get the Product Club, the long ones, or if you can just find the extra long ones in the Reynolds, right? I think you can get them at Sam's. I don't know. I guess they're for the extra potatoes. I'm not sure. But anyway, use the longer ones, especially is it just, you don't have to bring the foil down, right? So try to use the long one. Now, you can use a board, or you don't have to use a board. So do you guys use boards now?
Yeah.
Yeah? So I like boards to use for the first couple ones, but then after that, honestly, especially if I'm using that paintbrush, I don't use a board. I'm just going to use it freehanded. The key thing that I see in a lot of balayage, because we can make the balayage look good, right? And it looks really cool when the lightener's on, and it's all laid and it looks pretty, yeah? Then we go rinse it out, and we blow dry it, and you start to see the little markings in there. Yes? And we're like, well, how did that happen? Because it looked really great when it was on there. It's because a lot of times we check the surface, but we forget to pick up the bottom. And we've either semi-saturated, or we've saturated all the way through without evening that out. So that's okay. That's going to happen, guys. Seriously. So whether you saturated or semi-saturated, if you've saturated through, you can see, just take your finger and make sure that it's fully saturated so that you're going to get good, even consistency. And if, again, same thing, if you've semi-saturated, go ahead and make sure it's saturated through and that you're just kind of rubbing your fingers on and you're rubbing that end piece through, all right? The key is to not, but if you have, that's fine. Just make sure that you correct it, put the piece of cotton there for your next piece or your foil, and then lay on top. The key, too, is also not to use this hair at, once your foils are laid on, to, blend, because then you're blending everything underneath that and underneath that and underneath that, right? So then that's how we start to get some of those spots, all right? So, I like to keep a paper towel or just a towel in general, kind of on my spot here, because I like to wipe the brush, or I'll use 10 brushes. I don't care, or like I said, each time I mix up a new bowl, I get 2 new brushes, because the brush being clean is huge. It's a really, really big factor, especially when you're using these brushes. If you're using, again, that paintbrush I told you about, it doesn't really get as dirty as a tint brush, okay? And because I have ruined several dresses,
You already have
see? At least it didn't have color yet.
That happened just now.
Yeah. Telling you, my 3-year-old is just like me. He'll fall over his own feet, and I'm like, how did that happen? And my husband's like, DNA, honey, DNA. Okay. So I'm going to take a piece. Now, if you want maximum lightness, I need to take smaller pieces. If you want more of a natural look, like a true balayage, where it's just going to have your pieces free-handed throughout, and lighter towards the end, then take a thicker piece. Okay? Because basically what you're doing is you're laying those pieces up by the scalp, and then you're going to be pulling and saturating on those mid-links and ends wherever you want to see that lightness. Okay? Another good thing to do is really look at where their facial structures are. What do they like about themselves? Do they like their eyes? Do they like their cheeks? Do they like their chin? Are they saying their face is fat? Right? Is that their key thing? They have a great oval face. Listen to those key things. It'll tell you where to start that kind of ombre, or that where you're going to pull a lot of that lightness through. Typically, it's the cheek down, cheek or chin or jawbone. But those are just good things to look at. Kind of like we talked about with the trend, right? So same thing. All right, so I'm going to take my brush, and I'm going to put on gloves. And then can I get a towel?
$6.50 is the light insider.
See?
Perfect.
Yeah. So, and like I said, if you're breaking that down, and typically you can use that for 2 clients. So, it's basically $5 per client. Thank you. Oh, I forgot you got me all that. All right. Now, I like to use gloves because I'm typically going to pull this through on the ends with my fingers and make sure it's saturated. and then I will use my towel to wipe my hands so the towels get pretty dirty, okay? So I'm going to take my brush, and I've got quite a bit on here at this rate, so I'm going to start towards the bottom, and then I'm going to work my way up. Do you see how I'm doing this? So all I'm doing is lightly brushing this hair, okay? And I'm sweeping it at a faster pace. I want to soften it, right, with my brush, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to fully saturate that hair, okay?
So you're not putting a lot of pressure on the pieces up top. You're just
Exactly.
lightly-
That's a great key takeaway. Thank you for that, because that, you guys, is the key. And if you'll notice, what way am I holding my brush? Right? Horizontally, right?
Mhm.
A lot of people try to come in because we want to be able to stripe that on there. No, that just use that. Like if we're beating the lightener on here, okay, like we should be, then it's right where it needs to be anyway. And I'm just softly coming, because that's where I want to lay on that surface. And then wherever I want that lightener to be, that's where I'm going to come in and I'm going to saturate that, right? So that looks pretty soft, does it not?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to look underneath, right? And it's not under there. It looks very soft here. It's fully saturated down on the bottom. And then this is where I would come in, and if I needed to, I would take my dry brush, and typically I'm going to, because it looks soft now, but watch it now. Now can you see where it starts and finishes?
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I'm saying. So use that dry brush. Then I would lay my foil here. And then I would lay another one on top.
Hi, how can I help you?
Okay? And here's the thing. You may want to fold them. You can kind of fold the corners in. Anything that works, right? So to get those two to stick together.
Just cut off a couple inches. Clean it up.
Okay. We're
Hello.
gonna shampoo her first.
Yes.
Okay, sounds great. School haircuts.
Yeah.
All right. So then I'm going to take my second piece. Okay? And depending on whether I want to go towards the round of the head, do I want to see more color down here? Do you want it to be softer, or do you want it to be more bold? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Would be if I'm going to start taking an angle, or if I'm going to keep going up horizontally throughout this section. Okay? If I wanted to see, a little bit more of those kind of highlighted pieces on the top, this is where I would horseshoe crown it out. Right? So I would still have 5 sections instead of 4, but it would be that horseshoe section on the top. And at that point, I would pull everything back, kind of making your V's and your W's, okay? So, but for this case, I'm going to go ahead and do a just horizontal up the section. I'm going to take that piece, and here's the thing. As you're going throughout, there's a single, okay? There's a double. And then there's a triple. A lot of people call them V's and W's, and I don't know what you would call the single. Maybe an I.
I do the V a lot.
Yeah. So the thing is, you want to alternate it throughout, though. Okay. And alternate where you start up to the head and bring it down. Right. That's what's going to create that beautiful. Like you don't know where those started, who put them in, how they put them in. You can't figure it out, right? And it's just fluctuating the single to the 2 strand to the 3 strand, as well as. Am I bringing all 3 up? Am I bringing the W halfway up, right? I can start the W middle part up and the other 2 parts a little bit lower. So just fluctuate where that starts from the scalp area down, and that creates that beautiful softness, okay? So again, I've got quite a bit on, so I'm going to start down here. And then I've got my brush laid horizontally. And remember, balayage is sweeping of hair. So it looks like I'm sweeping this hair, yes? So that's basically what I'm doing. So I'm going to kind of do the W on this one. And I'm bringing it up a little bit.
Is it hard to hear me? How come? Then why didn't you say so?
And on those frontal pieces, they want those, right?
Yeah.
So
So they want it to just stick out around their face.
right, and those are what I'm calling the money pieces. So I want to make sure again that especially right around that hairline that you have either fully saturated or like fully saturated or just laid on top, because if you semi-saturated, that's where those spots are going to come in at. So I want to be able to lift up, like right here. You see I almost have two, so I'm going to take the tail of my brush and I'm going to separate that right there so that they fully get those two pieces. Okay? I'm going to lift up. Do you guys see anything underneath? Nope, right? And then I'm going to come in, and that at this point is where I would saturate. Okay? But look at how many strokes I'm having to take and how much I'm getting that color. I'm getting it a lot, right? I'm having to dip this brush in a lot. This is where I'm telling you the paintbrush comes in and actually works a little bit more in your favor, because I'm having to do this and then I'm coming in and I'm really trying to soften this line, right? And I'm going to get my dry brush and I'm going to soften it more. And with the dry brush, it's almost like I'm putting on blush. So think about it like that. When we put on blush, how do we hold the... When we put on blush, how do we hold the brush?
Like, yeah, an angle, we're going up, or like at an angle.
Right, so we're not like taking the brush and going, that looks, I mean, I've seen some people that look like that's how they do it, right? But typically you're moving fast, right? Because we want to keep it soft and just put a little bit of that color in there, yeah?
Yeah.
So think about that when you're doing that dry brush. Like, we are not moving your wrist. You're typically letting your fingers do the work, right? You're coming in with that brush, and I'm letting my fingers do the work. You see, my wrist is stable, so I'm letting my fingers do the work. For so long, we've been taught to like hold that foil and like get it up there so that their stuff is like super close to the scalp, right?
Yeah.
And so now we're trying to back it off a little bit and really create that soft fusion. So using that dry brush is really going to help out with that, okay? Again, typically, like I said, using the paintbrush, like I would just come in with the paintbrush. If this was my paintbrush, I would have it on there. It's thicker, you know, it's about that wide, all right? And I come in and I, again, can either saturate down here, and I'm doing the same movements, but you're not having to work as hard. So you're going to make sure, again, you want to lift up, make sure it didn't go through, but it's not as hard of a push. So even if you may push a little bit harder, it's not going to go through as much, okay? So that would be kind of how you do it with the paintbrush. Same technique, just a different brush on that sense, okay? So as you can see, I would leave this if I wanted to. If I wanted more lift here, I mean, I can just fold this. It's up to you how you want to do that, all right? You could put another one on top. Doesn't matter. At this point, this is where I could lay a cellophane. I could have put cotton underneath, all depending on how much lift I wanted to see, okay? Now, again, I'm going to take another horizontal section. And I would do it till I've got to about the parietal ridge, and then I would pull out this front piece to give them that money piece. However, I could still work the rest of it up horizontally. Again, I would have the horseshoe shaped section pulling everything back, all depending on the way their hair falls.
So when you do the money piece, what technique do you use? A W, a V, or a
I typically pull out the piece I want, and I just like, I'll show you when I
saturate
get.
the whole thing?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'll show you once I get there. Like if they have a side bang, I may start, like I'll take the triangle section from like the top of the, like where the high point is, where the comb leaves the head, to the front, right, to each corner of each eye, and I'll section that out. That's typically a side part, whether they're going that or even if they split down the middle, right? That's their frontal pieces.
A lot of the girls that I do like my balayage and ombres on, they usually will do, like, what I've noticed trend-wise now is a lot of them don't do the bangs, but they'll do like light framing.
Right.
So, and sometimes I even have some girls that are just parting it right down the middle.
Exactly. So
So
either way, section it off. Like put the comb on the head, where the comb like leaves the head, that's the high point of the head, to the corner of each eye, like their eyebrows. So
Okay.
definitely go to the
And you
corner of their eye,
saturate
because
that
some people's
whole-
eyebrows end here. So corner of each eye, right? You're like, no, that's not gonna work. Okay, so the corner of each eye, and that's their front piece. That's what falls down, or the cowlick falls one way, right? Doesn't matter.
You saturate that whole piece, or you just
No,
section?
no. So that section that out, and I may take that front piece, that front like 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch, whatever size I'm using, And I may only pull that like an ombre, like I wouldn't even pull that up. Or I may pull like 2, and I'll show you once I get there, I'll section that off for you and show you.
Okay.
And then I may do that. And then the next piece I may use a little higher, because what that's gonna do is create that soft veil when they go and they pull it around their face.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Or I may put the W on that first one, and as I work up, I may back off of the scalp, because then it's off the scalp. I'm still creating that depth, but as they move it, they've got that those pieces in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to show you this one, and then if you want to try some of these, I'll sit down. You can try some. If not, we can move into the swatches or whatever you want to do. Okay. So here's the thing. If I want to do like an ombre or even like a balayage with the back combing, because that was kind of the way it came out, right? We were like over back combing the hair, okay? And then when you got to the bowl, it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get all that out, right? So
You gotta take them back to the chair and come back.
Exactly. So you really only want to do like a pass or 2. So you kind of start at the bottom, you hold it tight, and like you just push up once. You may not even need that much, right? That's a lot, okay? So again,
I've never done the back combing.
so that's one way, but again, that can get where it
Just because
it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So the best way that I like to do it is start in the middle of the hair and just give it like 2 light pushes. And then I'm still gonna do this, and what that's gonna create is a beautiful look, but when I comb this out, I'm still gonna have some of that dark running through, right? Because sometimes we get overly light down here, and we're really trying to blend it, but then you see those people that still have the dark almost down to the bottom, you're like, well, how'd they do that? You can mix all 3 of these techniques in with what I'm saying. So, you know, single, double, W, right? And then come in and just a 2 or 3 pass, no more than 3 is needed, but look how easily that's gonna come out.
Yeah.
Okay, because I didn't try that hard, so you can do that very, very softly. Okay, so 1, 2, right? And then as I start to come in, and I would just do at this point where I saturate the bottom. Okay. And then I would lightly come in and just work up into that back combing a little bit using my dry brush. And then again, just making sure that this is saturated good. And then when I pull that out, now it's going to be like, okay, now this is really, really soft. Now that one under there has those pieces. Okay? So you want to try some of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you mix the techniques.
Yep. I will do, now typically if I'm doing the paintbrush, I use the paintbrush the whole time. If I'm not, then I will use all 3 of these techniques. And I may, especially if I'm switching like developers, or let's say I'm using Light Insider and I'm using